The doors open up, and as they open up, Peter, I get this immense sense of peace.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Peter O. Estévez Show. This is your host, Peter O. Estévez. Today I have none other than Ray Altamirano. Ray Altamirano is a doctor, an artist, and a humanitarian. Ray is a first generation American. His parents came from Coahuila, Mexico to contribute to thrive in this great land. He's a native of the South Side San Antonio, graduated from Harlandale High School, and graduated from Texas A&M. He's also the founder of Casa Salud Family Medicine Clinic. Dr. Ray Altamirano believes that the healthcare system is broken. Health insurance companies and healthcare administrators are greedy, and they contribute to the problems. And he elected to exclude them and want to work directly with the patients. This is a way of contributing to the solution, making healthcare predictable and affordable and pure. Your visit at Casa Salud is only $100 every time you see the doctor. As a courtesy, he will include, or the clinic will include, 5 basic labs: CBC, CMP, THS, HbA1c, and lipid panel. There will not be any surprise bills or any fees after your visit. And if your healthcare plans requires more specialized labs, you will only pay the face value of the lab work. He's very transparent. I love the work. He's actually one of San Antonio's up and rising stars. I was really intrigued by what he's doing, his contribution back to the community. He's humanitarian labor, and I wanted to invite him to be on the Peter O. Estévez Show. But more importantly, he's part of Latin Talks San Antonio series, and in the San Antonio series of Latin Talks, you're gonna be able to meet local Latin leaders where they're gonna share their answers and solutions to challenges and adversities that ones face. And we're gonna be able to have a Q&A, and Dr. Ray Altamirano is one of those humanitarians that are gonna be part of that panel. Hello, Dr. Ray Altamirano. Welcome to the Peter O. Estévez Show.
Hi, Peter. I'm very honored that I'm a part of this series, and I'm definitely excited to share my passion and what I've been doing here in San Antonio.
You know, not only have you started a clinic that only charges $100 per visit, including all the lab work, the list of lab work that I listed, and there's no surprise billing, but you also are an artist, and you discover that you had that gift or that talent to be an artist. And you actually, many of times when your patients cannot afford even the $100, you have created a fund through selling you art to be able to out of the that particular fund take care of the patient's visit. Why do you do that, Ray?
Well, it's a matter of combining my passions, right? And you know, when you come into Casa Salud, what you're going to notice is it doesn't look like your run-of-the-mill primary care office, right? Because it looks more like an art gallery. Art just litters the walls all over. So I like that. It's, you know, we're very non-traditional, even my hours, how I work and how we function. But this is exactly what I created for the demographic I want to serve. And the art is, and I'll be very honest with you, it started in my clinic because my wife didn't want much of it at home. You know, I needed somewhere to put it. But you know, I've always done art for myself, right? And I include it on the walls. It's always a conversation piece with patients and say, what is this about? You know, who's the artist? And I say, oh, it's me. Oh, wow, you know, you do this and you're a doctor. And I say, look, but it's very, you know, why I do art is a therapy for me, right? You know, we're all imperfect beings and we have a way to cope, right? And that's something that we all need to learn on ourselves, is how to cope. And my coping mechanism is art. You know, when I'm doing the piece, it's typically not what I'm thinking when I'm painting it. It's whatever I'm going through in life at those moments, that once it's on canvas, it's off my chest, off my shoulders. I call it more the process over the product, right? For me to get there and get it off, it took a piece of me, and I'm very flattered at the product when someone else likes it, but it's typically for me. So I had a little bit of a conundrum when it came to people wanting to buy art, even before I combined it with my clinic. It's because It was mine. I didn't make it to sell. And when I did do commission work or to sell it, it didn't feel therapeutic anymore. It felt like work, right? And work for me is expensive. So, that's what that is about. But I included in there, I like to start that conversation piece, but then also let them know you're in a new place, right? This is not your run of the mill. This is not your normal doctor's office. This is somewhere where we're going to care about you. And not only that, we are the experts in cost conscious medicine in the area. No one else does medicine this way.
What does cost conscious medicine mean? And
Exactly. Yeah, cost conscious medicine. This is how I like now. I take in medical students and train them, right? And when they come in, I say, look, you need to learn from me. You're going to learn academics everywhere. But what you're going to learn at Casa Salud from me is how to treat people. I didn't say patients, treat people,
wow.
right? Now, that's it, right? You need to be at eye level or below eye level. You need to connect with them. You need to know that you're there. There's ways to communicate with just body language. But when we talk about cost conscious medicine, these students that come in, they're very green and they're so academic. The book says this diabetic needs this new medicine because of the studies that are out there. I agree. However, for an uninsured patient or a patient who has not met their deductible, it's going to cost them $1,000 a month. That's not an option anymore. I don't even go there, right? I go back to the $4 lists that are at all the general pharmacies and say, look, this is our game plan. Let's find one of these that work for you. But you got to meet me halfway now, patient, right? You have to really change what you're doing because you cannot afford $1,000 a month. So it puts the onus back on the patient to say, look, all right, I realize this doctor's going out of his way to do it this way. And one thing, I don't want to let them down. But another thing is, have I really tried? Have I really? And also, we just push education, right? You need to see what are you eating that's making you this way? What are your genetics that predispose you? So what do you have to change preventatively, right? So that's exactly what we preach, and I'm very proud to be that go-to in the community.
I have a lot of questions for you, Dr. Altamirano, and I really love and admire what you're doing. Thank you so much for the service to the community in San Antonio, in the South Side of San Antonio, and throughout the city. But you in our pre-interview conversation, you told me that you discovered later in life that you had the gift of art, of painting.
Yeah.
How did you discover that?
Well, that's interesting, right? Because there was a big event in my life that it shook my world and changed everything. And I share that event, right? Because although traumatic for me at the moment, I relive it every day in a positive light. And I'll explain exactly what that is. My daughter, who's 9 years old now, when she was when she was still an infant, she developed seizures from fevers, and I was familiar with this because one of my oldest son had this, and I know to start the clock. But her seizures, the first one we found out, they don't stop, right? So rushed her into the hospital. I had my clock going. Doctors came in. I let them know, look, I'm a physician. She's been seizing 13 minutes. I know the medications that need to be given then and there. It took me right back. They gave her dosing of medications. First dose didn't do it. Second dose didn't do it. Third dose did it, but it put her in what we call respiratory failure.
Wow.
These medications that are benzodiazepine suppressed her lung drive. She needed to get intubated. And all this is happening right in front of me. And I'm there. And I remember this as being three different people. I was there as a doctor, as a dad. Then I was there watching myself be both. It's difficult to explain how that is, but that's how I remember it. Now, and I see the fear on everybody's face. This is one time where I wish I was oblivious to what these machines meant, what the numbers meant, but I knew exactly what they meant. And then she finally did get intubated, put a breathing tube in her throat, and even at that, her levels were low.
Wow.
They were rushing to get her up to the PICU, and as this was going on, there was a nun. It was at the Catholic hospital downtown. She said, "May I pray with you?" Now, I've always considered myself very spiritual, not very religious, but very spiritual. And I said, "Yes, please." I don't know what was said, what's going on, but she's praying with me. My daughter goes in the first elevator to the PICU, and we follow on the second one. The doors open up, and as they open up, Peter, I get this immense sense of peace.
Wow.
In the worst troubling times of my life, it just hits me like it's an intense peace. And I just realized, like, I'm this big. I'm nobody. These doctors, I'm a doctor. They're doctors. They couldn't do anything for her, right? But I just felt this peace that it's going to be okay. I felt this peace that my little angel's gonna make this, and it's gonna. And sure enough, Peter, in a matter of hours, the breathing tube's out. She's like nothing ever happened, right? We
Wow.
stayed for some testing, and we ended up leaving in the next few days. But at that moment, I was working already 3 years on the South Side as a community doctor out of residency. But I said, as much as I love what I do, now this wasn't Casa Salud, this was a different job. I said, I need to be at home. I have a bigger calling than medicine, and it's to be a father. So I said, look, I just made complete changes. I said, I need to be at home. I went and scoured and found jobs where I would work as a nighttime doctor at a hospital, working less days. So I was off more. And it was through this that I got a skill set, right, for more critical medicine care in the hospital. And it was a complete change of family community medicine to hardcore internal medicine, ICU admissions. But I only worked 10 days out of the month. I was off 20, and I only worked nights. So I only worked while they slept. So I'm dad more than doctor. And I made that a point in my life to say, I'm always going to be dad more than doctor. But that led me in the last 5 or 6 years. I've been having different jobs, and I eventually ended up working in an emergency room. And it's a freestanding emergency room. These are not attached to hospitals. Still on the south side of San Antonio. So great. But and it's a job I'm very, very grateful for, Peter, because it pays my bills and it allows me to do what I'm doing now, right? It allows me this freedom of not having to worry about money when I practice.
Wow.
And that's what I do, right? I still work in the ER, but it was through the ER and some patient encounters I met with that led to Casa Salud. And part of it was, even though I'm on the south side, I'm not accessible because of what insurance plan they have. Uninsured patients, especially, they pay a hefty fee to come in. And most of what I field, or what we field in the emergency room at times, it's still primary care, but it's lack of primary care, right? Meaning your blood pressure is 180 over 100. Yeah, it's high. You're going to have some pressure, some headaches. You're going to have symptoms. But it's like this because you don't have primary care. And when I would find out and ask them, why don't you have a doctor? Why are you here every month instead of seeing your doctor? Well, because I don't trust the doctors out there, right? I don't have one, or they don't speak Spanish, or I don't understand. I'm just afraid to go in. Or they're undocumented. I don't want to put my name on anything that might show up somewhere else. That's
Right.
a big fear that we underestimate. But what kind of the straw that broke the camel's back and said, well, I need to be back into my community at primary care. But I said, when I do this, I'm not going to do it on the terms of insurance, right? One, it makes it a volume game. It makes it restricted on how I need to treat a patient. And it makes my brain think different when I have to bill. I don't treat anyone different. Everyone gets adequate care, but you're trained in a system when you do medicine through insurance to practice a certain way. And sometimes you omit very important things like connecting with the patient,
Right.
right? Like having them look at you and you're not talking to the back of someone's head as they're typing, right? That's a big thing, is, even though like, oh, they're a good doctor, but I don't think he listened. And I don't think they really understood me. They just, I fit a mold of a diagnosis. So I got fast tracked to these meds and I didn't even get to speak.
Wow.
Right. So that's something that I said, look, that's something I excel at. Right. Now you started talking about, this event happened and my whole life changed. But it was, as I took this job as a night doctor, I needed to set my sleep schedule, right? Because I would have to stay up later to work the next night. And it happened actually by accident, my painting, right? And I say it this way. I went to a conference in Austin with one of my buddies from residency. We're going to go to a conference. So I stayed at his place. The night before, we're going to go to this concert. And it got rained out. So they canceled the concert. But he had a little paint kit that he got as a gift. He said, hey, I'm going to try to paint something you want to try to paint. And I was like, sure. I don't know how. I've never, but I thought, you know what? Let me paint something for my son. My son loves sharks, so I'm going to try to paint one. And we just, the hours passing, and I finished this piece, and I was like, wow, I liked it. He liked it. He was like, wow, that's pretty good. His fiance came in and saw she was some kind of art has a lot of art history in her education, and said, oh, where did you train? How did you do that? I said, I never have, and she was very just blown away by what I did. I know it from anything different, but when I left, my friend said, hey, you're better than this than I am. Keep my kit. I don't really use it. Oh, wow. So that's what it started with, right? Little tubes of acrylic paint. And so then I got excited about just learning more. I just jumped right in, right? I just said, these are some images I like to paint. Let me just put them on paper to pass some time to set my sleep schedule. But I found out as I'm doing it, I just found like I would get in this zone where I needed to complete it, or I felt uneasy. That became a trend, right? Anytime I became uneasy with anything, Peter, regardless how busy my life was going on, I make myself go paint. I make myself get in my room, detach from the world. I need to be alone, and I paint.
Your therapy.
Um, yeah, it is my therapy, exactly. Um, so that's where the painting comes in, right? So that's why I'm a little territorial with my originals because they're for me. Like I said, I'm very flattered somebody likes them. I make a lot of things that connect with my demographic, right? My age group, nostalgic things that I would see growing up, funny things. There's a lot of El Chavo stuff from me growing up, seeing it. A lot of things that are ranchero and I did a Ramon Ayala. I'm a big Vicente fan. So this is what was blaring in my ears when I was growing up. So it comes out. And I'm also a huge Elvis fan. So I do a lot of Elvis art that I include. Um, and anything that comes to me now. And recently I've been including other media. I still have not formally trained in art, meaning I've never taken an art class. I've never watched someone else do it on YouTube to learn some tricks. I just try it. Although I know I need to be there to grow as an artist. But this is my world where also, some people ask me, and I sometimes feel sometimes bad when I turn it down when they ask me for a commission because they like what I do. Can you try this for me or paint this or this movie? There's a scene or something. It's always, it ends up coming back to like, I've done that and it felt like work. I know what I make per hour in the ER. If I put that context into my artwork and the amount of time, it's gonna be very expensive.
Sure, very expensive painting.
And,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, and also it's like I don't know if I want to. Like some of the pieces I've sold that people wanted, and I put a high price thinking they'd go away, but they still bought it. I almost just at the post office when I wrapped it up and packaged it, almost turned around and said, "I let me give you your money back," because the money didn't matter. I wasn't after the money. It was the
Yeah.
piece, because and even at that point, I don't remember what I was going through when I did it, but it was important, right? And it was a piece of me. So I think every art piece I do is a small piece of me based on my experience. Um, but then came the combination of my passions, right? Because once I started Casa Salud, giving people access to me, I started putting the art up, and then it came. There was this one patient, Peter, and I'll tell you how we got a little more notoriety. There's a patient that was my patient that I used to see in another community clinic, and I hadn't seen him in a few years. He's actually my mechanic. I had a truck at the time, took it to him, and we started talking. He's a diabetic. He looked good. He lost some weight over the last 2 years. I hadn't seen him in a while, and he started seeing a new doctor. And after I left to the ER, and he said, "Look, I'm fine now, but last year I was terrified." "Oh, what's that?" He's like, "My doctor said my kidneys were bad, and I had to come in once a month to check my kidneys, and now they're good." And I said, "You never went to the hospital or saw a nephrologist?" He's like, "No, no." And he was a very good historian. He actually had a lot of his paperwork there in his shop, and he showed it to me. And when I saw what was going on, this is embarrassing as a doctor to see other doctors do this, but this man's kidney function returned to normal after the second visit. And every time he came in, I asked him, "Well, how much are you paying to go there?" He said, "Well, after the labs, I'm paying $300 to $500 per labs and the visit."
Wow.
But there was nothing wrong with this man anymore, and he was
Wow.
in there.
Yeah.
Maybe it was overly precautious, but do you know how much it takes? How much work it takes that man to make $500? I immediately said, "Hey, this is messed up. You need to report it. Who's the doctor?" He didn't give anything. He said, "Look, please, I don't want to get involved. I'm undocumented. I had a case a few years ago with the police. I don't want my name in anything. So please don't." He said, "I won't go to him again." But that I was so irate. I said, "How can our profession, how can somebody do this to this guy?" But then I realized he wasn't alone. This is common. This is common. And they do it for two reasons, Peter. One is the patient is scared. Two is they're not going to talk. So
Yeah.
this is yeah,
Go,
so
go,
this is something that just on all levels pushed me to say, I need to be here. I need to be a home for patients just like this guy, right? For who have could trust a doctor and also be transparent. I know labs don't cost that much. And it's what I learned as I was able to negotiate with labs, with imaging centers, with the pharmacies, to get prices down and be transparent. What does this cost? what's the bottom line price? And once you get enough different people doing it, you create a market, right? I go to the next guy. Can you match $400 for an MRI with the read? Yes. So now there's two places that do it for 400 as opposed to when they were doing it for 500, right? So cash is still king, and this demographic, this is how a lot of people live and practice. They don't trust banks, they don't trust the system, and they come in here with just knowing that it's a safe home, it's a safe haven. I'm not going to report anywhere. My information, whatever you tell me, stays with me. There's no information going anywhere. It's all on paper. But if you're in this country, you're like my parents came here to contribute, and you need an honest doctor, let me be your guy, right? That's why I create the moniker El Doctor de la Gente, because that's exactly what we're about. And all this is only possible, Peter, because I'm not worrying about making margins. I'm basically break even what we're doing, but it's because of my other jobs. And it's what happened that day with my daughter, that it was a promise that I needed. You know what my gift is? My gift is connecting with people and helping them teach them about their body. And I also had this gift unknown that came a few months after that event with my daughter, that I learned how to paint or knew how to paint, as if I had been doing it my whole life.
I love it, doctor. I love everything that you've done. I want to talk a little bit about the demographics and about the people that you're serving, our people, our community. There's over 60.1 million Latinos, Hispanics in the U.S. It is projected that by 2060, there'll be over 111 million Hispanics throughout the U.S., and then one out of four Americans would be Latinos or Hispanics. Okay, we contribute over 6.1 trillion to the GDP, the U.S. GDP. If we were our own country, would be the eighth largest economy. And the reality is that there's a lot of resources in our economy. You said it correctly. There's a lot of people that for fear of banking, for fear of being reported, for fear, and a lot of cultural habits as well. They keep cash at home. They keep a low profile. A lot of that has been social conditioning. A lot of it has been a belief system that we've been ingrained with. And it's some of the things that we want to break through, not only by having this platform, this podcast, to be able to talk about these issues, but also through Latin Talks. Latin Talks is a platform where we are going to be able to have this type of conversations with local community leaders, and where they're going to be able to share the answers and solutions to challenges and experiences you once faced, as you face your daughter. You are a doctor, you are an artist, and you're a humanitarian. But the reality is that that's not who you have been all of your life. I want to talk a little bit about your childhood. Your parents migrated from Coahuila. Your mom used to work at Levi Strauss, and your father and your parents got divorced when you were 13 years old. So tell us a little bit about that childhood and how that impacted you and shifted who you are.
Yeah, no, and I think to start, we my dad was a carpenter, and then we had a meat market. So it was always about working, right? We always did good at school, but even as an elementary school, you get home, we go to the meat market, we clean the molino, you clean the saw, you sweep, you mop, you price tag all the little items, all the groceries, little things that we had. And it was about working, right? Working for my dad, working with my dad. My mom, and this was to a certain point. After 13, my parents separated. But even at that, there was always work ethic, right? And there was always, school was pounded on us, right? I go back, Peter, and I go back to Mode High School, and I talk about how strict my mom was with our grades. And I say this jokingly, but it's really not. We had to make A's, right? A's are good. B, you meant the belt.
Wow.
You couldn't. That's how it was. And I fool around and I say, C was el cinto, right? It still happens. And I say, I'm pretty sure a D meant death, but I never tried it. It was just strict. And I say that jokingly, but the bottom line is grades were it. You better be doing good in school. That's what they allowed us to be in sport activities at school, and we did well. So it was always ingrained. Education is the way out. But even my dad, my dad came across this country a few times illegally, so he ended up staying in the 60s, was a carpenter, and then had this feeling. My mom was always, she did get her GED in the States when she came over here at the age of 16. And she started working as a seamstress after we were all out of age school. But yeah, she worked at Levi's, and Levi's was good to us, right? Meaning we get very trendy clothes at the time at the employer braids. But my mom found a skill set where she did well. But yeah, but after they separated, it was basically a single household, and it's me and three brothers, right? I'm the third or fourth of brothers, and we were all boys. And my mom was raising us. We'd work nights, so we took care of each other a lot. And my mom taught us skills that she taught. I knew how to cook. I knew how to clean when I was a kid, right? Because I knew how to wash my own clothes. Just because we all had to pull our part, right? And on a one income salary for my mom, we realized school was the way, and it really was when it came time for scholarships and whatnot. But what was always ingrained is and that was something that just education is the way, right? If you want to see us, and in the summers I would work, my at the meat market we used to cash checks for people and people in the neighborhood. A lot of these guys work for a painter, so I would, when I was 13, 14, I started working in the summers with a painter in the hot sun in 100-degree weather, holding a ladder with other guys, scraping, sanding, and wow, I mean, I was making good money as a 13-year-old. $200 a week is what I got paid, but it was tremendous work. And I told myself, I don't know if these men were older doing this job. And so, wow, is this really the way? Is this really what I got to do to make money? Then in the next few summers, there was a program where I went to school. It was at Our Lady of the Lake, our summer research program, where I got paid more to be there. And I was in the AC and reading. And I said, wow, this is, is this the difference? This is when my eyes open, and this is what white collar and blue collar means, right? This is like, and I'm making more, like, and I'm just using this. Wow, right? That was just mind blowing at that early, but I saw the way, right? But what was always a grain was work ethic, right? And I think there's always trials, right? And we couldn't afford certain things, even even our medical care. When I thought about making Casa Salud, Peter, it was kind of a throwback to the 80s, right? When we were sick, we went to the doctor, they paid the doctor, and the doctor took care of us. End of the story.
Absolutely.
We didn't have to submit a bill. We didn't have to get a surprise bill. We didn't have to go to this one and then call this line and get approved and do that. No, that's how it happened.
Yes.
It was direct patient care.
Yes, absolutely.
As steep as it was, that's how it happened, right? So I said, I want the same thing again. I just want direct care this way, right? I'm doing the work, I'm gonna get paid for it, but it needs to be me, right? I don't need somebody on this year and somebody in this year, and then somebody even restricting my typewriter, what I say and do. That's not how it should be. So when you talk about childhood, it ingrained the hard work ethic, right? And more importantly, what I realized what it later was, it was grit, right? Part of my tribulations, part of my, I always had, I was valedictorian in my high school, had a chip in my shoulder going to college, Texas A&M, but it wasn't always that way. I didn't get into medical school in Texas. I got waitlisted.
I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that because you were top of your class, you were valedictorian, and then you apply for med schools. And you actually share with me in our pre-interview that you're on top of your game. Here you are, you graduate, you're going to you want to apply to med schools, and then you get surprised that you're not admitted. So
yeah, and I think part of this, Peter, is also too, right, when it comes to just a standardized test like the MCAT, right? Even though my academics are there, my grades are there, that standardized test was such a hurdle. And even sometimes it just became like, wow, is this why, right? Why is this test such a challenge for me when I know I'm smart? I know I know the knowledge. And then some of that came back down to thinking of, what, am I just not prepared, right? I mean, even though I'm grateful for where I went to school and what I did in high school and whatnot, did I really know how to take a standardized test? This is not something we would train for. And that's why, when I had interviews for my interview, they always came down to that score. And I'd never felt that score was reflective of my knowledge set. It was reflective of my test taking skill. But and then I worked a year in research.
But you didn't allow that to stop you. You didn't allow that to stop you.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't, right? Because this is what happened. I ended up working a year in research in San Antonio after college. But I realized there was other schools opportunities. And it was actually a student I ran into in the interview process that I ran into at a bar. And I said, hey, I remember you. Did you get into medical school? No. Did you know? He's like, what are you doing? I said, I'm working research. I go, what are you doing? He's, I'm going to go to medical school in Guadalajara. Their main office is here in San Antonio, and they enroll every 6 months.
Wow.
So what? Then I looked into it. And I said, well, if this is my way, I don't have family that deep down in Mexico. My family's on Coahuila and the Frontera. They're not down there. But I had nothing else to hold me back. I had, the good thing, I had no debt, right? No debt because of my scholarships as a minority, because of my grades, because of my mom whipping my butt in shape to get these scholarships. They had no money to pay for me. So I had it 100% paid. I got to get there with no debt at that point. But then I said, look, I need to see what this is about. And that was in itself, first off, Guadalajara itself, it's a beautiful city, right? And the people, the place, what they call it, the land of vitamin T,
Yeah.
right? The tequila, tortas, tacos,
Yeah.
it's all there, right? And everything I grew up with, right? When we were little, we did the charriadas, and we used to dress up and do the baile folclórico. I realized the birth of that was Jalisco. Once I got there, it's like, aquí nacieron los charros, right? This is where it's all happening. But living there, the place is beautiful, but the schools are not so much. They do things their way, and it's very shady. What I learned right away, Peter, I said, look, the only way I'm going to get back to the States and practice medicine is I just need to be on my game. I'm here to work. I'm not here to pass the time and party. I'm in my early 20s, single. No, I'm here to work. And it was hitting the books, and it was passing tests. It wasn't, Peter, I'm going to say is it wasn't until medical school where I learned how to take a standardized test after college, right?
Let's talk about that for just a second. I want to key on that. I want to key on the MCAT and the standardized test. Who failed you?
Yeah, you know what? I think it was maybe my own. I think when I think about
this is not victimizing yourself.
blame. No, I think it was the education system, right? Because now I see a difference in my children when I was a kid in elementary or middle school, is that they're trained for standardized tests. Like you would take tests the way you're tested. You would learn that way, right? You would be quizzed and you would get graded on a similar system on how this computerized test is going to grade you. It was training like that, right? And it's insane because within the same city limits, my counterparts I later met at A&M that went to Northside schools. And you know what? I realized they would have an actual course, or they would be in some kind of a program where they had a computer screen in front of them, learning how to click answers on a test, right? And we never, I think there's a way standardized tests, right? And there's been so much that has come of how standardized tests kind of, we weed out I don't think they weed out the unintelligent, they weed out the unprepared, right? And I think preparation from a source in general in my district was what was lacking. And obviously, I mean, it comes down to an individual at a certain point, but I was the valedictorian, and how could I not know it? How was I, I felt challenged in certain parts of school. And so when you talk about I think it was a system fail. I think it was my own demographic, my own district did not see as far ahead as others. Maybe their expectations weren't as others.
And let's touch about that, right? I want to key in on that right there, because your demographic, when you say your school district, your demographic, primarily Latino, what's the percentage in the South Side?
Hey, I'd say easily over 90%.
Over 90% Latino. So there's lack of funding, lack of prepared teachers,
yes,
administration. Okay, it's an at-risk school system, right? Okay, so there's not enough resources being filled in. So it doesn't matter. We're already at disadvantage with poverty, with the fact that a lot of the parents in those communities do not come from an educational pedigree, right? So you're able to see your children right now, and you're able to see the systems and the programs that they are able, the standardized testing that they're able to see. But your parents didn't understand that, because they didn't have, if there were anything like my parents, my mother had a 6th grade education. My father had a 3rd grade education. And this goes back to something that you said very early in our conversation. Education is the way. Education is the way. That is the barrier to or not to success, right? So, and also let's define education. Education, not everybody needs to go to college, but everybody needs an education. Everybody needs a preparation. Everybody needs to understand the things that are happening in this world today and how quickly we are evolving and changing, and how quickly the amounts of information that is available for us. You know, today you could Google that, right? You could Google, how do I take a standardized test? You can go to YouTube, you can get a tutor. There's 1,000 different ways that you can do things today that were not available when you were in school. Okay, or were the beginning or you didn't have the information readily available to you. So yes, it is a system, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that as parents, if our parents don't know that they can demand that, because we come from a generation that you keep your head down, calladita te ves más bonita, don't rock the boat, and all of those are the generational cycles and beliefs that we need to break, Dr. Altamirano. So your children, my children, and their children are able to have opportunities that don't make it as hard as you and I had to go through. You had to go through back to your parents' home country in order to get an education when you were the high school valedictorian, where you were top of your class, and you couldn't get into med school in your own country. Right? So tell me, let's switch gears a little bit. Okay. What is it that you have learned today as an artist, as a humanitarian, as a doctor? What belief system that maybe you had as a young boy that you don't believe the same way about today?
I think it's just the impact that actions do, right? Because, you know, Peter, part of it, I always shy away from politics. I don't like even the word itself, but it's in everything, right? It is everything when it comes to when you're going to start making a change. But I never felt like when it came to caring for patients, I'm not going to wait for the government to come up with something for this person, like my mechanic. I'm not going to wait for there to be some kind of a break or some kind of a grant that comes in that's going to serve this small n, right, number of people, right? So I said, you know what, it's by actions, and I'm one person, but I feel I could impact my community by just being honest and transparent, right? Trust me again,
Absolutely.
right? My profession did it to ourselves when it comes to greed and gouging, and it's all part of the same system that's there. That's why when I said I'm going to go back in primary care, this box, I'm over here. I'm not even going to look at that box. It doesn't pertain to me, and it shouldn't pertain to my patients. So first off, I saw just what changes me is I felt, right, and even Peter, right. I always go back to that day in my life with my daughter, right. I felt even a few months after that, I felt every word in my mouth was scripted. I felt like there was already a plan here, and now I'm just on the track and I'm moving along, right. And this was part of it, right. You know, something I knew my ability, and now the only way it was able to happen was to be financially stable, right. I get how money works, right. I get why certain things happen a certain way, and it comes down to that always. So, you know, I don't want to make that the focus of my business. I want to make it just of something that's so standardized and so just here it is, cut and dry. Now let's get to the meat of why you're coming to see a doctor, right? So I think one thing I learned is just the impact of an individual, right? And I found, like, I believe me, when I went to A&M, even though I went with a small group of friends, culture shock, right? Going 95% Hispanic to go in there and I'm the only one in the class. And I'm light skinned, I got colored eyes. People didn't know sometimes I was until they heard me speak. And it's always like, oh, where are you from? I'm from San Antonio. No, where are you from? You know, kind of stuff. That culture shock is, and then I start seeing that, you know, people my age in my own city, and they talk about, oh, we go to vacation at this country or that country, and these like, you know what, I go to Spada Park. It take me to SeaWorld every now and then. It's like, wow, how is our life so different? Because it's a different zip code, right? Because it's this. So I learned who I am when I started going to college, right? Because I realized, hey, I'm Mexican. I realized I love San Antonio. I realized, you know, I'm proud of what I am. I mean, at first, you know, even my parents, when they were growing up, and like, you don't talk Spanish at school. You avoid Spanish, right? We're here now, right? Kind of stuff. But no, I felt like getting some of that back. Like, you know what? And it just fortified it when I went to Guadalajara, right? Down there, I was a pocho, right? Even though I could speak Spanish,
Sure.
they knew right away, you're not from here, right? So even there, I was a minority again. when I was over there, right? So I've always felt like I've had that, like, I've been almost the underdog role, or the person that's not expected to do that much. But my expectations are far greater than anyone could ever put on me, right? And it started because early on, I felt good enough because of how I did in school, right? And I got so many scholars. I had that. I had a confidence in me, and I think it was just that work. I put in the work, Peter. I put in the work at that medical school to study every day. I put in the work to learn what I can, because I knew once I came back, it's an uphill battle, right? There's a residency program. They're interviewing students. They're from the States, and then there's a foreign grad. I'm considered a foreign grad. So why are they gonna pick me if my grades are not as good as theirs? Right?
Yeah.
And it just, you know what, it was grit, right? And it really was like, I'm gonna find a way no matter what. No matter what, it's gonna happen, right? And if I do it, I'm failing myself. I'm failing my parents if I don't achieve this. So what I got out of it was, I mean, now it's a supreme confidence, right? And not in a cocky way, but it's just like, put it in front of me, and I think if I really try, I could do this, right? So that's exactly what Casa Salud is, and that's exactly what I'm preaching to the students that come and train under me. That's exactly what my patients get out of me, right? It's like, look, this is for real, right? This is not just a gimmick, and then there's going to be a hook at the end that I'm going to have to pay a certain amount, exuberant amount, because I'm in. So I think a lot of it is what I learned is I learned me, I learned who I am, and I learned what I can do. And I don't think there's a limit in front of me that is ever going to keep me at a certain point, right?
I love that. And I love the word supreme confidence. I love it. I love it. In fact, I'm gonna quote it. I'm gonna figure out how to make a quote out of that. Let me ask you a question. There's a couple of things that you said that really resonated with me because, I'm one of 13 children. Migrated to the United States when I was 10 years old. Mom had a 6th grade education. Father a 3rd grade education. And yet I was confronted with that same issue. You don't speak Spanish in the classroom. We used to get punished. We used to get paddled in the classroom if we spoke Spanish. And there was many times that, that I was literally embarrassed for mispronouncing a word or saying something that I didn't really know how to say properly, because growing up, Spanish was my first language and English was my second language, obviously. So, what belief, what social conditioning, what is something that you saw your parents do as parents that you do different today that you know that you don't want to take to the next generation moving forward? And
and I think a lot of it even just starts with our finances, right? Parents never plan for the future, stay cash heavy, pay everything off at once. We're not going to have a debt. I think part of it is just I realize what other people that have financial stability do, and it's invest, right? That's one thing that I realized. Look, I'm going to prepare for my kids. So that's one thing is there was never enough. Now, sometimes there wasn't enough to invest, right? That makes a lot of sense, right? But then also it was just, I think the motive, that the blue collar mentality, right? That if I'm not breaking my back, I ain't working hard, right? And I think I do work hard, and it's not that I'm breaking my back, is that I'm just I'm building up my brain more, right? I'm making this muscle in my brain. So I think part of it was just that shift of saying, look, there's a way to still be successful, and I don't have to do what maybe the expectations are for me, right? Or maybe just someone that doesn't know who I am or doesn't know me, just sees me as a Mexican from the south side of San Antonio. This guy's going to be a good labor worker. That's kind of what somebody might think, just being overgeneralized. But I think part of it was just that breaking that mold of look, there's another way to make it. And then also the other thing is, is like, I think, things that you talk about, right? Things that there's the machismo that's always around, that in men, not hugging their kids or whatever. There's some degree of that is always, I completely, I think sometimes that just, those are all insecurities of us, that are presented that way maybe. But I think just those, we talk about very strict social constructs, right? The mom stays home and works and takes care of the kids. The dad's out doing this. So, that system started to change long ago, right? More broken homes and broken families. So people are more of the breadwinner. But it's also that mentality I think that I'm pushing onto my kids, right? And that's something that the most thing I'm grateful for, I think, Peter, that goes unsaid is every day when I encounter my patients is just the humility, because what do I got to complain about? This person has to struggle between paying me or buying food for next week and something, right? So
Right.
confronting with that, it gets that there, right? And back and just kind of back to basics, and it's the core of us, of who we are. So I think changing a lot of the cycle of just the thought process of how we can make a living, and then what our roles are in the community. We all know what our roles are at home. Those haven't changed much within the Mexican culture, but the roles in the community, oh yeah, we're involved. The roles is like, look, I feel my expectation for myself is to make a difference, and this person that is from another country working hard and afraid to put their name in anything, but they're sick. They need trust, right? They need somebody that they're gonna find that confianza, and este doctor me va a ayudar y no me va a quitar el dinero, right? That's
Yeah,
the bottom line of that.
absolutely. And I'm glad you talked about the community aspect of it, because the reality is that we need to be involved. We have an obligation to give back to our communities. We have an obligation to give freely to what so freely has been given to us, the opportunities that have become to us in abundance, sure, through struggles, through hard work, but we still have been benefactors of great opportunities. You said something that really resonates with me. I really want to touch on it a little bit deeper, because there is a correlation, there is a mentality, there is a belief, primarily in the blue collar community, that if you don't work hard, it does not equate to accomplishing much. And the reality is that my father worked very hard, but he worked hard just to support his children. He never lived out of a state of survival. He never lived out of a state of poverty. He just worked hard. You know, he never accomplished anything. But I think it's important for us to realize, also for the younger generation, that we have to use our brain power. But in order to use our brain power, we need to feed it, right? We need, not by scrolling through social media, not by watching multiple series on Netflix, but really embracing education, embracing the resources that today are available that were not available when you and I were growing up. Maybe when you were growing up, and I know when I was growing up, there was no Google, there was no YouTube, there was no ebooks, there was no podcasts, there was no cyber mentors that I could look up to. As a matter of fact, speaking of cyber mentors, you and a lot of the leaders that we are showcasing at the Latin Talks in San Antonio are cyber mentors, or could become cyber mentors. We are putting a collection of people that have made great strides in their communities, in their personal lives, in their careers, in their families, that are making a difference, that are making an impact. And growing up, we didn't see a lot of people like that. To be able to touch and talk to a doctor or somebody that could come and contribute to the well-being of the community, it just didn't happen. He was a good doctor. He was a good person. It was a good system, but there was not community involvement. And I think, you know, my mission in Latin Talks is to be able to create what I didn't have growing up. I didn't want to be just like the drunk uncle. I didn't want to just be like the painter or the roofer, or, I wanted to look for somebody that I could aspire to be. I wanted, why is it that we have to be labeled to be the painter or the roofer or the contractor or whatever? Why is it that we cannot choose who we want to be growing up, right? But society has put us in this box that we are only going to be whatever our community decides that we should be. And I think you are breaking that mold, not only for yourself, for your children, and for the community. And I want to thank you for that, Dr. Altamirano.
Thank you, Peter. I appreciate those words.
So let me ask you. I mean, gosh, we touch on a lot of things today. What do you think is our responsibility as human beings, as Latinos, to the community? What is our responsibility?
I think some of the things we see historically is coming from a neighborhood, or when you start looking at these zip codes with the lower median average of the lower median salaries, you start seeing that when there is talent, that it leaves, right? The talent, there's a smart guy, he goes out, he's doing great things elsewhere. I think it's good to leave and grow, but it's more important to come back, right? And that's where I come in and I say, look, if someone's going to do this in the South Side, I'm volunteering. I want to be that guy, right? But these other communities, I think to answer your question, is going to be is giving back, right? And it sounds so cliche to give back, but give back the way you can. It doesn't have to be financial give back. Some things that happened through my clinic, right? Once we got we were on some news shows and people would show up saying, look, I can't donate money, but I own 10 barbecue pits. If you need to do a fundraiser for a patient, I'll cook for free, right? It's like that's what he had at his disposal, and that's how he could help, right? And I think, sometimes it's finding a way to be proactive. Maybe the opportunity, you don't know how to get there with your own skill set, but whatever your skill set is, you have one, and you have a way to share it with your community to make it grow, right? But I think part of it is sometimes is maybe, I grew up in this part of town, I live here. I grew up in another city, but now is if there's a way to come back home and be that person, right? I don't say I'm an activist, I'm an actionist. I do it all by my actions, right? Actions speak, right? I can't wait for a government plan to pay for someone's visit. So I'm going to find a way for this person to come see me. Doing your actions in your skill set, you will contribute. But I think coming back home, right? That's my responsibility. And I think, where we came from is, there's something in San Antonio that we talked about that was a big topic or was brought to light, an article at the end of 2017 called Economic Segregation, where you take two zip codes in a city and compare average salaries. San Antonio had the biggest disparity in the whole United States, not just in Texas,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes when you see this, it's like, why? When you look further back, was it by design, right? Unfair lending practices in the 70s, 80s.
Redlining, yeah.
Yes, sir, right? So, but what's going to let this low zip code what's going to change that? It's someone staying there and making money there, right? It's someone contributing back, opening a business there, right? It's having a branch of your business there. It's definitely coming back in and saying, look, there might be something I could do better than someone else. And sometimes we all know about the South Side. South Side's loyal, right? They know I'm South Side, they know I'm Harlandale. Guess what? They let me know, I let them know, right? It's all over the walls. Right? My art is very South Side. So I think my responsibility is to contribute my skill set.
I love it. I want to preface this by I think it's important for people to realize that this is not about placing blame. This is not about criticizing our system. This is actually about two men that are interested in their communities, trying to find solutions that people can embrace and become part of, and whatever that solution may be, whether it's contributing to a fundraiser by creating a barbecue plate, whatever it is, but the idea is to contribute, to be part of the community, and to be able to identify, inspire, educate, transform, and empower leaders in our community so they can go back and empower the younger generation. Dr. Altamirano, a doctor, an artist, and a humanitarian. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I appreciate the opportunity to be involved with this. It's close to home, and we're happy to do exactly what you said we're trying to do. And it's an honor to be recognized for it. But we're just scratching the surface, right? We got so much to go, and I'm ready for it.
Absolutely, and I'm right there with you. I'm here to support you.